Incredible moment, single mom's surgery takes a touching turn when CEO reveals she's not alone. The cold fluorescent lights of the hospital room were a stark contrast to the warmth of her children's laughter echoing in her mind. Sarah clutched the photos of her kids tighter as the reality of surgery loomed over her like a storm cloud. Could she endure this? Or would this be the moment that crippled her family? The thought rattled her, what if something went wrong? She felt like another statistic, a single mother desperately trying to fend off an encroaching darkness, and her heart raced with each breath. The hospital, once her sanctuary, now felt suffocating. With her husband gone for 3 years, every bill felt like a boulder, demanding she carry the weight alone. Nursing had become both her lifeline and her downfall, working long hours to keep afloat while addiction threatened to drown out hope all around her. The pressure was relentless. Tuition payments for the kids loomed like ghosts at the end of a long, dark tunnel. As she lay here, waiting for her fate to unfold on the operating table, she doubted her capacity to rise again. She fought back the tears that threatened to spill. Did the world outside even see her? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Out of nowhere, a knock startled her. It was Lauren, the CEO she had seen in business news. Dressed impeccably, she radiated that kind of energy that typically intimidated Sarah, but there was something disarming in her smile. Lauren entered the room with a touch of empathy that seemed on the verge of breaking through the anxiety that clamped at Sarah's throat. This woman, a beacon of success, standing before her brought both hope and an underscored reminder of her own fragility. "I know this is a tough time," Lauren said, her voice steady yet compassionate, sharing her own struggles as a single parent. But just as silence filled the space, a flood of doubts crashed over Sarah. Could she trust that words offered by someone standing on such a high pedestal could change her circumstances? Would accepting help mean she had to relinquish control? As Lauren spoke passionately about her vision to uplift families like Sarah's, the barrier of doubt pressed heavier on her chest. For every step of encouragement, uncertainty followed like an unwelcome shadow, whispering that no matter how many promises were made, the systems in place would still leave her vulnerable. The tension was palpable, they were bound together in shared hardship, yet every optimistic notion felt tangled in the chains of reality. But clouds were gathering. The promise of hope was overshadowed by another unexpected turn in the journey ahead. As they strategized their way to attract attention to the issues plaguing individuals like Sarah, the inevitable institutional roadblocks loomed. Anguish bubbled up inside her. Had they already lost before they even began? What if their combined efforts went unnoticed, silenced by a cruel world that rejected their struggles? The moments felt suspended in time, spirals of what-ifs and uncertainties dancing threateningly in the air. As the operating room's door swung open, Sarah felt herself leaning precariously on the edge of a cliff. Would she have the strength to climb back up again, or was this the end? She had one choice to make, but the weight of the unknown bore down, leaving her grasping for an answer that never revealed itself. The blinding white light of the operating room was similar to the fluorescent glare she had just left, but here it felt even more isolating, devoid of any warmth or understanding. Sarah lay back on the table. The sterile smell of disinfectant filled her nostrils as the medical staff moved efficiently around her. Each movement spoke of their expertise, yet all she could focus on were her own fears swirling chaotically in her mind. She was here for surgery, a necessary procedure, but the reality was far from comforting. As the anesthesia began to take hold, Sarah closed her eyes, clinging on to the last memory of Lauren's words. The connection they had forged, brief as it was, had ignited a spark of courage. Maybe her voice could be part of something larger, a platform for others drowning beneath the waves of expectation and hardship. But with each passing second, doubt coiled tighter around her resolve. Could she extend her voice or even claim it? The darkness overtook her as she slipped into unconsciousness, but it wasn't an escape, it was a confrontation. Inside her mind, flashing images of hospital bills, overdue notices, and empty chairs at the dinner table played like an ominous reel. With her husband gone, the night sky that used to feel full of possibilities now echoed with loss and mortality. Would she even awake from this surgery? And if she did, would there be enough of her left to face the world again? A sudden jolt brought her consciousness back, and the blaring beeping of the monitors reminded her she was alive. As she blinked against the harsh lights, a nurse stood beside her, a reassuring presence amid the uncertainty. "You did great, Sarah," the woman said, her voice a balm to Sarah's fraying nerves. Gratitude surged through her heart, yet even that was overshadowed by a sense of impending dread. Post-surgery, she was faced with a new reality, her vulnerability laid bare even further. Days turned into weeks, each filled with physical therapy and doctor's appointments. Yet within this fragile domain, she began to discover something unexpected, a quiet, persistent determination simmering beneath her fears. As she stumbled through exercises meant to reclaim her physical strength, a newfound sense of pride seeped into her bones. Every stretch of muscle brought about the realization that she was not as broken as she once believed. Encouraged by her progress, Sarah began to jot down her thoughts, a journal of sorts. Page after page became a sanctuary for her insecurities and dreams. The entries transformed into reflections on motherhood and survival, ideas blooming despite the weight of her struggles. Writing had not just become an escape, it unveiled a layer of resilience she didn't know she possessed. What if I used this to amplify my voice? What if I shared my story? Just as clarity struck, another wave of doubt sent her spiraling. Would people even care about her tale? Or would it become just another sob story drowned out by the cacophony of numbers and statistics? As she penned her latest entry detailing her journey, tearing back layers of grief and strife, a voice within whispered that transparency could be her greatest weapon in this fight. But the nagging thought loomed: how would she face the scrutiny of the world outside, the very world that had often left her feeling unseen? Then, as she contemplated this vital question, her phone buzzed on the table. A message notification. It was Lauren, reaching out again, offering a meeting to discuss the next steps of their envisioned partnership. The flicker of hope surged once more. Perhaps the moment had finally come for her to confront the very fears that paralyzed her. Would she have the courage to step forward, to say yes? In the pause that followed, Sarah took a deep, shaky breath. The path to personal growth was often lined with fear and opportunity, but she couldn't let this chance slip away. The next chapter began to unfold, but the real challenge loomed ahead. Her choice would demand the ultimate confrontation between the past that sought to hold her back and the future that beckoned with possibility. Would she dare to leap? The moments following the buzz of her phone felt electrified. Sarah's heart raced, a turbulent mix of excitement and trepidation coursing through her veins. Lauren's name shimmered on the screen, a beacon of opportunity in the haze of her recovery. The weight of indecision pressed down on her, threatening to drown out the spark of ambition ignited during her time of vulnerability. With trembling fingers, she typed a reply, each keystroke a step toward her own reclamation. Sure, she had felt stranded in the currents of doubt and grief, she had experienced isolation that stretched like an endless horizon. But this moment, an invitation back into the world, asked her to confront that isolation head-on. This could be her chance to be visible, to shift the narrative from victim to survivor. After sending her response, Sarah immersed herself in preparation for the meeting. She rummaged through her journals, flipping through the pages filled with raw observations and musings about motherhood, solitude, and the resilience she had unearthed day by day. Each entry spoke of strength buried under layers of fear, testament to an evolution that demanded recognition. Was it time to share this audacious story? Days passed, each one a blend of therapy, medication, and fleeting moments of doubt. Yet with every passing hour, a strange excitement rippled through her, a yearning to reclaim her identity. The act of writing had transformed her. Each word pressed onto the paper became a thread weaving her story into a tangible fabric, one she could hold close as armor against her uncertainties. On the day of the meeting, Sarah slipped into a simple yet professional outfit, embodying the woman she wanted to be rather than the one she feared she was. As she stood before the mirror, a flicker of recognition surfaced in her reflection. This woman had survived. She had birthed a life amidst turmoil, could navigate the uncharted territory of her career, and realize her voice held value. Arriving at the meeting location, a cozy cafe bustling with life, she felt her heart synchronize with the rhythm of the world around her. Coffee brewed in the air, laughter spilled from tables, and the cacophony of conversations wrapped around her like a comforting embrace. Yet, despite the inviting atmosphere, a gnawing fear remained. What if Lauren wished for a perfect, polished partnership that Sarah couldn't uphold? When Lauren arrived, her presence was buoyant, radiating enthusiasm. "So glad you made it," she exclaimed, her warm demeanor easing Sarah's tension. As they settled into conversation, Lauren shared her vision, a project focused on amplifying marginalized voices in meaningful ways. The concept resonated within Sarah, stirring a mix of hope and skepticism. "So, I've read some of your writing," Lauren continued, as Sarah fiddled nervously with her coffee cup. "It's undeniable how powerful your experiences are. You have a voice that can touch lives." The weight of Lauren's words hung in the air, both exhilarating and terrifying. Could this be the validation she needed? Could she truly step into the role of advocate and storyteller? Questions swirled in her mind, battling against the hunger for connection and purpose. But amid the exhilaration, doubts clawed at the edges. Was she ready to take on the mantle of responsibility? Would she be enough amid voices louder and more experienced? Feeling her pulse quicken, Sarah had to decide. The meeting was slipping away like the last rays of sunlight at dusk, illuminating the possibility yet distancing it with her trepidation. One thing was clear: this was not just about sharing her story, it was about stepping into a realm where she could influence and impact. As questions and thoughts collided, an email notification softly pinged on her phone. It was an invitation from a publishing platform looking for personal narratives about resilience and recovery. The universe seemed to be making its demands loud and clear. The moment of truth was upon her. Would she have the courage to step into this new chapter of confrontation and empowerment? A formidable challenge awaited, one where she would need to confront not only her fear but also the doubts that lingered from her past. Would she be willing to embrace it fully? The clatter of dishes and bustling voices faded into the background as Sarah stared at her phone, her mind a whirlwind of possibilities. The invitation to submit her writing loomed over her like an uncharted territory, a threshold she was both eager and afraid to cross. What could she possibly add to the conversation about resilience and recovery that hadn't already been said? A voice within her whispered that this was her moment, a defining juncture that demanded courage. "Sarah? Are you with me?" Lauren's question cut through Sarah's haze, compelling her back into the present. Jennifer focused, forcing her thoughts to congeal into something coherent. I am. I just got this email." She held up the phone, revealing the words that punctuated her growing crisis. "We're looking for narratives that illuminate personal struggles with overcoming adversity." Lauren's eyes sparkled with interest. "That's perfect. Do you have something in mind already?" As her heart galloped, Sarah felt the dichotomy of her emotions collide. This was a chance to intertwine her passion for writing with her lived experiences, a potent mixture that had the potential to connect with many. But the fear of inadequacy lurked behind that bright anticipation. Could she articulate the complexity of her journey? Would her story resonate, or would it fizzle in comparison to the weighty tales of others? "Honestly, it's scary," Sarah admitted, her voice trembling. "What if I can't deliver? What if I expose too much of myself?" Lauren leaned in, her expression serious yet encouraging. "Vulnerability is your strength. People crave authenticity. It's what'll elevate your story. Those words settled in Sarah's consciousness like sweet honey. Was it so simple? Could the very aspects of her experience that made her tremble also act as her guiding light? In that moment of reckoning, a revelation struck Sarah. The act of sharing could be transformative not just for her audience but for herself as well. Embracing her insecurities could dismantle the chains holding her down. She had the chance to let her voice resonate in a world that often muffled the stories of single mothers. Maybe I could start with how I navigated motherhood while healing, she mused, leaning into her newfound resolve. There were days when the darkness felt inevitable, and I thought of quitting. But I learned to orbit around hope. Yes, yes. That's it. You've got this, Lauren encouraged, her enthusiasm infectious. Each reassuring nod from Lauren rekindled Sarah's belief in her potential. As the conversation elaborated around plot points and thematic threads, Sarah found herself articulating aspects of her journey she hadn't given voice to before. She began to see her experiences not just as burdens but as milestones that portrayed growth, insight, and resilience. The cafe buzzed around her, a tapestry of life teeming with stories yet untold. It became a mirror of her own internal shift, a world alive with voices, each contributing to a narrative greater than their individual threads. Yet as her confidence swelled, an insidious doubt flickered at the edges of her mind. What if her words didn't land the way she hoped? What if they brought judgment? Regret pooled in her stomach, nagging at the edges of her exhilaration, blurring the vibrant hues of her burgeoning aspirations. Sarah? Lauren's voice pierced through, bringing her back. You're going to need to write authentically. It won't be perfect, but it will be true. And that's what matters. As she nodded, an unsettling ember sparked within, a realization that the journey ahead required more than just the courage to write. It demanded relentless honesty, a fierce confrontation with her past and the emotions she had stored. Would she uncover truths buried beneath layers of grief and doubt? With the cafe's laughter ringing in her ears and her pulse thrumming in her chest, Sarah realized she stood at a precipice of transformation. It would be a relentless struggle, one where she would have to confront her own narratives. Her heart raced, teetering between hope and the acceptance of the raw reality of her experiences. The time had come to face the truth. Could she truly carve out a place for herself in others' hearts while wrestling with her own vulnerabilities? The challenge loomed ahead, threatening to unravel her newfound confidence if not confronted head-on. Would she embrace the inherent risks of vulnerability, no longer a solitary figure in a sea of stories, but a force to be reckoned with? As Sarah left the cafe, a cool breeze greeted her, its crispness sharpening the clarity of her thoughts. The weight of the email still lingered in her mind, and with every step, anticipation threaded through her veins. The uncertainty that had once filled her heart started to be infused with a sense of purpose. She was going to write, and she was going to be honest. Finding a quiet corner in the park, she took a seat on a weathered bench, her fingers trembling as they hovered over her notebook. The blank pages were a canvas, beckoning her to fill them with her truth. She inhaled deeply, letting the scents of autumn leaves and distant laughter mingle in her senses. This moment was hers to command. The first words came hesitantly, scribbles betraying her initial hesitations. Each line she penned whispered of days spent questioning her worth, her struggles balancing motherhood and her own silent battles. Would anyone even care to read this? As each sentence chased the last, the haze of self-doubt began to lift, and her thoughts crystallized into a focused narrative. What emerged surprised her. The passage detailed a day from years ago, sunrise heavy with insomnia, coffee brewed bitterly in the stillness, weaving through the haze of fatigue as her son's cries echoed through the silence. She wrote of that struggle when she felt suffocated beneath the responsibilities of being both a mother and a woman, healing from the fractures within. Would sharing this be too raw? Sarah's heart raced, mixing a longing for connection with the desire to shield herself. Then she recalled Lauren's encouragement. Vulnerability. The word took root in her mind, twisting into something almost exhilarating despite its inherent risk. She thought of how many others might resonate with her story. A single mother battling against the tides of expectation, feeling isolated in her fight. What if they could find solace in her honesty, be encouraged to face their own shadows? Her pen continued to flow, drafting out the skeleton of her article. It evolved beyond mere recounting, transforming into an exploration of resilience and acknowledgement not only of sorrow but also of the hidden strength that surfaced in times of turmoil. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, illuminating her page, the doubts began to recede. They were still there, clinging at the fringes, but now they felt manageable. What would happen if she shared not just her struggles, but also the moments of joy that punctuated her journey? The laughter she shared with her son when they danced in their living room, the quiet evenings spent reading together, the small victories of getting out of bed when grief threatened to pull her under. She envisioned the stories weaving together, creating a tapestry of hope. But just as her resolve solidified, a shadow flickered across her thoughts. What if her writing invited judgment from those who didn't understand? The fear of exposure returned, an overwhelming tide threatening to drown her newfound determination. If she omitted the messiness of who she truly was, could she still connect with her readers? Confronting this stark realization, Sarah halted. It wasn't just about finding her voice, it was about choosing to stand in her truth, even if it meant risking vulnerability. It was both terrifying and liberating. She squeezed her eyes shut for a moment, suppressing the wave of uncertainty that surged through her. This was her path to authenticity, but it would require more than just grappling with her past. She would have to embrace the possibility of rejection, the sting of judgment. Drawing a deep breath, Sarah opened her eyes, looking down at the words she'd written. She had a story authentic, heart-wrenching, and raw. Yet in acknowledging this journey, she couldn't ignore the significant edge of discomfort that accompanied it. The next step was crucial, finding the courage to hit send when her words were ready. Would she stand firm against the tide of fear that loomed, or would she retreat into shadows once again? As the sun set on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, a new resolve flickered within her. Tomorrow would demand another writing session, a deeper dive into her feelings. Would she face that challenge, allowing her voice the freedom to soar amidst the noise? Sarah clenched her pen tightly, knowing that the decision lay ahead, one that would shape her not just as a writer, but as a human willing to embrace all facets of her being. Could she truly juggle the roles of writer, mother, and self-advocate, or would the weight of her new ambitions see her stumbling once more? The following morning, the dawn broke with a hazy fog clinging to the horizon, a muted reminder of yesterday's doubts. Sarah clutched her notebook closely as she ventured into the park once more, a space filled with promise, yet laden with apprehension. The cool air wrapped around her like supportive arms, nurturing the determination stirring within. She settled onto her favorite bench, stamping down a vibrant, swirling chaos of thoughts. As she flipped open her notebook, she inhaled deeply, allowing the fresh scent of earth to ground her. Today wasn't just about putting pen to paper, it was about unearthing the courage buried deep inside her. She opened the page, glancing over the previous day's work. The lines were raw but undeniably hers. But where to go from here? The narrative was beginning to form, yet Sarah knew it required deeper exploration of the emotions still tangled within her being. What if she reeled in the nuances of her experience? Beneath the weight of motherhood, the duality of joy and sorrow danced, it begged to be acknowledged. Could she be brave enough to present that conflicting spectrum of life? With resolve lighting a fire in her chest, she let her pen glide over the paper once more. She recalled the moments when hopelessness washed over her like a tidal wave, nearly pulling her under. Here was a chance to dissect those feelings, to reveal her scars and battles, but also to honor every step of progress, hard-fought and earned. Yet the specter of judgment loomed like a shadowy figure at the edge of her mind, always lurking. She pondered the consequences of sharing. Would her words resonate? To cross the bridge between vulnerability and exposure felt perilous. Sarah's fingers paused as she pictured the potential backlash, those who might dismiss her pain or fail to empathize with her journey. She realized this dread was just another form of paralysis, one she couldn't afford. Once more, she closed her eyes and took stock of her aspirations. It was more than just being a writer, it was the deeply personal desire to connect, to portray the real struggles that resonate with others. This was not solely about recounting her sorrows, it was a chance to uplift, to gather the threads of empathy in hopes of weaving a larger narrative that demonstrated true resilience. In this moment, Sarah made a choice. No longer just a passive observer, she would document not merely the idyllic days but also the moments shrouded in desperation. She would write about the inner dialogues that echoed loudly in the darkness, those afternoons when playdates seemed like a cruel reminder of her solitude, and the nights when tears fell in silent resignation. The humanity within her experience had the power to speak to others, and that was a responsibility she felt privileged to undertake. As her pen rallied against the page, she began crafting her story more actively, interlacing survival and hope. Between her fears, she found fragments of empowerment, acknowledging that her vulnerabilities could inspire rather than alienate. Determination flickered brighter, enough to expose paths through her doubts and uncertainties. But what surprised her most was a wave of regret for the overarching self-doubt she had clung to for far too long. She questioned the roles she had allowed to define her: mother, writer, and self-advocate. Each role had its complexities, yet each also provided her a chance to forge a new identity. Before she could dwell further on this revelation, a ping from her phone interrupted her concentration. It was an email, the subject line shimmering with potential: an invitation to share her writing at a local women's forum. A chance to present her story. The weight of her heart sank under the sudden swell of excitement and fear. What if this was her moment to fully step into her own narrative? Suddenly, she was confronted with a powerful choice: bask in the illumination of what she created or retreat back into uncertainty. In that split second, she questioned if this was the catalyst that could solidify her new identity. Or merely another step back into the shadows. With trembling hands, she stared at the screen, the cursor blinking insistently as it beckoned her to make a decision. Would she rise to the occasion or allow the specter of fear to dominate once more? The tension hung palpably in the air, and time seemed to stretch infinitely as she leaned closer, ready to confront her future head-on. Her heart thundered at the thought of hitting reply, knowing that the response could irrevocably alter her journey. Would she have the courage to pull back the curtain on her life, revealing the full spectrum of her truth? With a deep breath stirring the remnants of her resolve, Sarah tucked her phone back into her pocket, a primal need for clarity overcoming the chaos of choice swirling in her mind. She closed her eyes, taking a moment to recalibrate. The gentle rustling of leaves around her offered a momentary distraction, luring her thoughts back to the present. This was a place she had chosen to confront her truth. The surrounding noise settled as she began to sift through the layers of her fear. What held her back more, the idea of failure, or the fear of success? The prospect of failure stung like lemon juice on an exposed wound, but the thought of success made her pulse race. What if this invitation signified validation, a beacon affirming her voice? Stripped of excuses, Sarah pondered what it would mean to expose her vulnerabilities, the grief interwoven with her triumphs, the corrosive self-doubt she sought to shed. The world of motherhood had made her fiercely protective, but her story wouldn't resonate if she boxed it in. She recalled the caricatures of perfection she had allowed herself to see. She needed to be real, messy, a tapestry woven from threads of joy and sorrow, not simply a sanitized version of her life. Determined, she slid her notebook closer, deciding to jot down phrases that captured her most profound feelings, her victories and failures. With every line she crafted, her pen imbued the page with a sense of purpose she had only begun to discover. The rawness of pain was a palette from which she could paint the truth, she realized. The shadows of self-doubt began to recede ever so slightly. If words could conjure images, touch raw nerves, and stir the dormant emotions of others, perhaps they could transform herself as well. This was her moment to detach herself from the fear of judgment and instead embrace the possibility of connection. As she poured her heart onto the pages, Sarah unearthed fragments of her past that pulsed with relevance, moments that shaped her solely as a writer and a mother. She navigated through recollections of sleepless nights tangled in thoughts of inadequacy, the embarrassing struggles of keeping up appearances, and the strength she gradually harnessed in challenging her preconceived notions of success. Every echo of laughter and whispers of despair wove together an intricate thread that painted a picture much larger than herself. Hours slipped away unnoticed, and soon the park around her transformed with the setting sun. The once vibrant hues of bright laughter faded, leaving a muted calm that settled over the place. Sarah scribbled furiously, feeling intoxicated by the honesty flowing through her fingertips. Yet as the ink dried on the page, she felt the weight of uncertainty creep back in. Sharing this story was a double-edged sword. What if the pieces she laid bare resonated too deeply with the pain of others? What if her sons heard echoes of her struggles and became burdened instead of inspired? A flicker of panic welled up as she considered the significance of her voice. It could either illuminate or obscure. The intent behind her words was now crucial. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across her notebook, an introspective metaphor signaling the fine line she walked. With her pen poised above the paper, she took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts anew. Was she ready to share the jagged edges of her experience? Would this provoke understanding or further isolation? In that moment of tension, as the world outside faded further, Sarah felt the constellations of her conflicting thoughts coalescing into clarity. She stood on the precipice of authenticity and expression. The choice lay ahead of her like an open road, wide and inviting. Tomorrow, she would reveal her answers. But now, just outside the periphery of her reflection, another possibility began to take root. What awaited her on the other side of that submission? The risk of truly being seen. The tension lingered, probing her resolve. In the heart of the looming uncertainty was the promise of transformation. A seed of doubt to either push her deeper into her narrative or free her entirely. Closing her eyes once more, Sarah envisioned her story not just as a tale to be told, but as a bridge to others. She leaned towards the unknown and felt it beckoning. What awaited her as she prepared to dance on the edge of vulnerability? Would she discover community in her truths, or confront the echoes of her fears head-on? The dawn of decision lay just before her, alive with possibilities. The next morning, a blend of anticipation and anxiety coursed through Sarah as she prepared for the day ahead. She stood in front of the mirror, tracing the familiar lines of her face, searching for a hint of the courage she had felt last night. The skin beneath her fingertips seemed to whisper reminders of past struggles, yet she drew strength from them, grounding herself in the narrative she was about to share. As she brewed her morning coffee, the scent enveloped her, sharpening her focus. Today, she was no longer merely a bystander in her life, she would step into the role of protagonist. Her thoughts churned, an amalgam of hope and nervousness intertwining as she recorded her reflections in her notebook. The blank pages seemed to taunt her, but with every stroke of the pen, she felt the weight of what she had experienced transform into something tangible, a weapon against doubt. The first decision she faced was whether to return to the park where she had surrendered to honesty the previous evening. Instead, Sarah opted for familiarity, choosing a quaint local cafe where the hum of activity grounded her. The aroma of freshly baked pastries mixed with the chatter of patrons, creating a comforting ambience conducive to her writing. She settled into a corner with her laptop, the screen glowing in front of her like a portal to uncharted territories. Her fingers hovered hesitantly over the keys. This digital canvas would be the vessel for her unfinished thoughts, a collection of stories that encapsulated both her failures and insights. Yet, the trepidation loomed large. What would they think? Would they judge? As she typed, a sudden revelation gripped her. The stakes felt astronomically high, yet the act of writing could only lead to liberation. What if her voice could resonate with someone grappling with similar fears? In that moment, she acknowledged her power not just to tell her story, but to inspire others. It was a choice steeped in vulnerability, yet it was the only path leading to her own healing. She paused, the cursor blinking defiantly in the silence. In the depths of her uncertainty, clarity emerged. She would infuse her narrative with not just experiences, but brutal honesty. The sleepless nights, the moments of crying in the shower, the sense of loneliness amidst the crowd, they were all part of her tapestry. Fear wanted her to shy away from the truth, to veil her experience in optimistic platitudes. But Sarah understood that true connection flourished in the raw and imperfect. The chatter around her faded as she crafted her words with passion and determination. She committed to sharing every element: the regret of missed opportunities, the humor in unexpected parenting challenges, the bittersweetness of watching her children grow up while struggling with her own identity. Yet, once again, self-doubt reared its head. What if her sons read her reflections someday? Would she expose them to the vulnerabilities that almost felt like betrayal? Each typed word solidified into a challenge to silence that voice. She would write for them as much as for herself. This journey of authenticity was not for her alone, it would serve as an anchoring point for those navigating their own paths. As the sun streamed through the cafe windows, illuminating the pages of her draft, Sarah felt the weight of her decision settle into a sturdy resolve. She was aware of the risks, yet the freedom within that uncertainty compelled her forward. She glanced at the time, realizing hours had slipped away. A decision had crystallized: she would embrace this leap into vulnerability. The submission could not be mere words, it had to be an act, a manifestation of her journey. As she prepared to hit the send button on her piece, thoughts of the anticipated reactions swirled within her. Would they resonate with her struggle? Or would the judgment push her deeper into isolation? The digital clock flickered, drawing her attention back. This was not just a turning point, it was the cusp of her transformation. Sarah hesitated, heart racing as she prepared for the final act in her narrative. What awaited her after sharing her truth? Would her vulnerability attract understanding, or unleash a wave of criticism that would make her retreat from the very journey she had bravely embraced? The stakes had never been higher, and the echoes of her answer lingered tantalizingly close. With a deep breath, Sarah pressed the send button, releasing her carefully crafted narrative into the digital void. An electric rush coursed through her as the screen confirmed the submission. She felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, both exhilarated and terrified, knowing she had just unleashed a part of herself into the world. Would this leap of faith lead to flight or free fall? Moments stretched into eternity as she stared at her inbox, waiting for any sign of a response. Each ping was a jolt to her system, but rarely did they live up to the intensity of her racing heart. As the hours passed, self-doubt prickled at her mind. Had she been naive in thinking her words could resonate? Her candor, which had felt like empowerment earlier, now seemed foolish, a raw exposure of her deepest vulnerabilities. Pushing against the tide of anxiety, she turned her focus momentarily to her children. Their laughter echoed in her mind, a reminder of the joyful chaos that filled their home. Would they see her newfound courage as strength? Sarah envisioned them reading her reflections someday, perhaps in their own struggles with identity and acceptance. There was solace in that thought, a thread connecting her past with their futures. Deciding to step outside for a brief escape, Sarah wrapped herself in a light jacket and headed toward the park. The air was crisp, a sharp contrast to the growing warmth within her that came from sharing her story. With each step, she felt the nagging voice of doubt dissipate slightly, replaced by a glimmer of hope. The park was a sanctuary of sorts, a place where nature thrived despite the uncertainty of seasons, perhaps that mirrored her journey, flourishing amidst chaos. At a bench, she pulled out her phone and began scrolling through a feed of benign posts and bright images. It seemed oddly disjointed from her own reality. Everyone appeared so picture-perfect, scrolling through moments that lacked the raw authenticity she had laid bare. Sarah shook her head, a mix of annoyance and determination brewing inside her. Why should she crave approval from those polished snapshots when her truth could deepen connections? A muted vibration on her phone interrupted her thoughts, signaling an email notification. She grasped her phone, heart racing anew. Response received flashed on the screen, and her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. Her mind raced through possibilities: supportive messages, weighty criticisms, or perhaps silence altogether. As she read through the sender's notes, her anxiety transformed into curiosity when she recognized the name, the CEO of a popular publishing house. Your narrative resonated deeply with me. I believe you have a unique voice that could impact many. Let us discuss possibilities for collaboration. The email read, both an invitation and a challenge. Instantly, clarity washed over her. This was not merely an opportunity for professional growth, it was a validation of her personal journey, evidence that exposing one's truth could lead to unexpected connections. The path ahead was filled with potential, yet it simultaneously beckoned her to redefine herself under the scrutiny of the professional world. What did it mean to let her authentic voice shape her career? Would she emerge stronger, or risk losing the edges of her vulnerability in the process? Sarah's mind raced as she balanced the weight of the opportunity against the gravity of her previous fears. In the faces of her sons, her purpose flickered: to dare, to be seen, despite the unpredictability that lay ahead. As she walked back home, her steps felt lighter, each beat resonating with newfound determination. Inside her, the next chapter began to unfold, one that teetered between the exhilaration of her unpolished truth and the realities of professional expectations. The clash of these worlds loomed before her. Would she embrace a new identity forged in both personal and professional realms? Or would fear of expectation drive her back into the shadows she had only just begun to escape? The next morning, Sarah woke to bright sunlight streaming through her window. Her heart fluttered with a blend of excitement and trepidation as she replayed the email from the publishing house. This was not just an offer, it was an unspoken challenge, representing the culmination of her transformation, a spark that ignited the flames of ambition she had kept tucked away. Over breakfast, she recalled the chaos of her early days as a single mother, overwhelmed yet unwavering. The duality of joy and sorrow intertwined, fueling her determination to shape her narrative. She took a deep breath and allowed herself a moment of gratitude. Everything she had endured had brought her to this pivotal juncture. With renewed clarity, Sarah armed herself with a plan. She would embrace this opportunity, letting her authentic voice resonate in the literary world. Pulling out her trusty notebook, she began brainstorming ideas for her collaboration with the publisher. Each thought ignited a spark within her, a reminder of the resilience she had cultivated through navigating the trials of motherhood and self-advocacy. As the days passed, Sarah devoted herself to crafting a powerful pitch, a mosaic of her experiences, stitched together with honesty and grit. This project was not merely an opportunity for recognition, it was a manifesto of her struggles and a testament to her growth. Yet, doubt shadowed her progress. What if the world saw only the softness of her vulnerabilities, dismissing her message? It was during these moments of hesitation that she reflected on the encouragement Lauren had offered, reminding herself that true stories had the power to evoke change and connection. She pushed past the fear, channeling all her energy into her writing, each word a declaration of her courage. Weeks later, the day arrived to present her proposal to the publisher. Dressed in a tailored outfit that reflected her professional growth, Sarah stood before a boardroom filled with individuals who once seemed untouchable. Their faces, a blend of skepticism and curiosity, stirred a wave of nerves within her. Would they resonate with her message, or would they see her simply as a single mother without the polished veneer? As she spoke, an unexpected calm enveloped her. The words flowed from her like a rushing river, each sentence dripping with authenticity, each pause allowing her emotions to punctuate her points. She shared her struggles as a single mother, her battles with self-doubt, and how she had emerged with the determined resolve to be heard. When her pitch concluded, a hush fell over the room. The CEO, the same person who had sent the email inviting her to collaborate, leaned forward, and a soft smile broke across his face. "Your story carries depth, and your voice is undeniably impactful," he said, clarity resonating in his words. "We need more perspectives like yours in this industry. Let's work together." Joy surged through Sarah, and although this was the professional validation she sought, it was more than that. It was a reaffirmation of her journey and her growth. Her vulnerability transformed into strength, reshaping not only her narrative but also her understanding of success. With each passing day spent working with the publisher, Sarah learned to balance her identities as a mother and a writer. The once daunting challenges now appeared as manageable hurdles, each completed writing session bolstering her confidence and cementing her voice in the literary landscape. One evening, seated opposite her sons at the dinner table, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment wash over her. She shared stories from her days at work, her passion spilling into their casual conversations. It struck her then, she was no longer just surviving, she was thriving. This newfound identity, fortified by her recent achievements, reshaped her relationship with her children. They were witnessing their mother reclaim her narrative, discovering strength beneath the layers of vulnerability. As the months unfolded, Sarah continuously received praise for her writing and her public speaking engagements. Community forums became reservoirs of inspiration as she began sharing her story, feeling the warmth of understanding radiate from those who resonated with her journey. The little fears that once tried to suffocate her began to dissolve. The final touch came when she received an invitation to speak at a national literary conference. This platform, she realized, was a nod to her hard-fought transformation. Looking back, she could see how each challenge had sculpted her into the woman standing before the world now fully capable and undeniably authentic. As she prepared her speech, Sarah knew this was not the end point, it was merely the next chapter of her journey. She felt a surge of gratitude for the evolution she had undergone, each struggle now a badge of honor affirming her resilience. The once suffocating darkness had faded, revealing a landscape brightened by her achievements. In that moment of quiet reflection, Sarah recognized the gravity of her choices. The leap she took into vulnerability had become a path toward empowerment. She was no longer a solitary figure, she had forged a community with her authenticity. Embracing her truth transformed not only her narrative but potentially the narratives of countless others. Sarah stood on the precipice of her public journey, ready to share her truth with the world, affirming her story mattered. She had mastered the art of vulnerability, transforming it into her greatest strength. And so, with anticipation coursing through her veins, Sarah tapped the space bar to begin her speech. This was her moment not just to reclaim her story, but to inspire others to write their narratives, filled with resilience, strength, and authenticity. Don't wait even one more second. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that can inspire and ignite courage within you. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. We depend on your support. Comment below your reactions and theories about this heartfelt ending, and remember to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. Your engagement truly makes a difference.